The doorbell rang at exactly 7:30 p.m. Mark Wilson froze, his daughter's math homework forgotten on the kitchen table. Nobody ever visited their modest apartment unannounced. Through the peephole, he saw a woman in an impeccable charcoal suit, her posture radiating authority. When he opened the door, recognition hit him like a physical blow. Those eyes, he would know them anywhere, even 20 years later. "Hello, Mark," she said, her voice steady but with an undercurrent of something he couldn't quite place. "I've come to collect a debt you owe me for 20 years. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more emotional journeys that will touch your heart. Your support means everything to us." Mark Wilson had built his life around routines and responsibilities. At 42, his world revolved around his 16-year-old daughter Emma, his job as a high school English teacher, and the small but comfortable apartment they called home since his wife's death 5 years ago. The carefully constructed stability he'd created was about to be shattered by a ghost from his past. "Sophia," he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sophia Chen?" The woman nodded, a slight smile playing at her lips. "May I come in?" Mark stepped aside automatically, his mind racing. Sophia Chen, now apparently the CEO of Chen Tech Industries according to the business news he occasionally glimpsed, stood in his living room, looking completely out of place among his worn furniture and modest decor. "Dad? Who is it?" Emma called from her bedroom. "Just an old friend," Mark replied, his eyes never leaving Sophia's face. "Keep working on your homework, honey." Sophia's expression softened slightly at the exchange. "You have a daughter." It wasn't a question, but Mark nodded anyway. "Emma. She's 16. An awkward silence stretched between them until Mark finally found his voice again. "What did you mean about a debt?" "I don't understand." Sophia's professional demeanor returned. 20 years ago, you made a promise to me, Mark. The night before I left for MIT. Do you remember?" Of course he remembered. How could he forget? They had been 18, high school sweethearts with different paths ahead. Sophia, brilliant and ambitious, had earned a full scholarship to MIT. Mark, passionate about literature and teaching, was staying local at the state university. "I remember," he said quietly. "You promised that no matter where life took us, if I ever needed anything, anything at all, you would be there." Sophia's voice remained steady, but her eyes betrayed a vulnerability that shocked him. "Well, I need something now." Mark swallowed hard. What could I possibly have that the CEO of Chen Tech Industries would need? Sophia looked away for a moment, gathering herself. When she turned back, there was a determination in her eyes that reminded him of the girl he'd once loved. "I need your help, Mark. My father is dying." Chen Wei had never approved of Mark during the 2 years he'd dated his daughter. The stern immigrant who had built a small electronics repair shop into a respectable business had higher aspirations for his only child than the dreamy boy who wanted to teach literature. "Your father never liked me," Mark said, handing Sophia a cup of tea as they sat at his kitchen table. Emma had retreated to her room after brief introductions, sensing the tension in the air. "He respected you more than you know," Sophia replied. "He just didn't think you were ambitious enough for me." Mark laughed without humor. "Well, looking at where you are now, I'd say he was right." Sophia shook her head. "Success isn't just measured in money and titles, Mark. I learned that the hard way." She took a sip of her tea. "My father has pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The doctors give him weeks, maybe a month." "I'm sorry," Mark said sincerely. "But I still don't understand what this has to do with me." Sophia set down her cup. "Before he dies, he wants to make amends. With you." Mark stared at her in disbelief. "With me? Why?" "Because he believes he destroyed something precious." Sophia's voice wavered for the first time. He convinced me that leaving you behind was the only way to achieve my potential. He manipulated me into breaking things off completely, no contact, no explanation. He told me a clean break was kinder. The old pain Mark had buried years ago resurfaced. You disappeared, Sophia. One day we were planning how to make long-distance work, and the next, you were gone. No calls, no letters. Nothing. I know, she whispered. I've regretted it every day for 20 years. Mark ran a hand through his graying hair. So what exactly does your father want from me? He wants to apologize in person. And? Sophia hesitated. He wants to know if there's any chance you could forgive him. Forgive us both. The next morning, Mark found himself sitting across from Emma at breakfast, trying to explain the situation. So this woman shows up out of nowhere, tells you her dad ruined your relationship 20 years ago, and now wants you to come give him forgiveness on his deathbed? Emma summarized, eyebrow raised in perfect teenage skepticism. And you're actually considering it? Mark smiled weakly. It sounds crazy when you put it like that. It sounds crazy because it is crazy, Dad. Emma buttered her toast with unnecessary force. You don't owe these people anything. Maybe not, Mark admitted. But sometimes forgiveness isn't about what people deserve. It's about letting go of the past. Emma studied him carefully. You still have feelings for her, don't you? Mark opened his mouth to deny it, then closed it again. It's complicated, Em. Sophia was my first love. When she disappeared, it broke something in me. I never really understood what happened until now. What about Mom? Emma asked quietly. Mark reached across the table and took his daughter's hand. I loved your mother with all my heart, Emma. Never doubt that. What I felt for Sophia was a lifetime ago. But that doesn't mean it wasn't real. Emma was silent for a long moment. So what are you going to do? Mark sighed. I think I need to see this through. For my own peace of mind, if nothing else. The Chen family home was in an upscale neighborhood that made Mark acutely aware of his second-hand sedan and off-the-rack clothes. Sophia met him at the door, dressed more casually than the day before but still exuding an aura of success and confidence. Thank you for coming, she said, leading him inside. This means more than you know. The house was tastefully decorated with a blend of modern furniture and traditional Chinese art. Family photos lined the hallway, Sophia at her MIT graduation, at what appeared to be her company launch, receiving awards. A life of achievement and recognition. Your father is in the sunroom, Sophia said. He's having a good day, but please don't be shocked by his appearance. The cancer has taken a toll. Mark nodded, steeling himself. When they entered the sunroom, he almost didn't recognize the man sitting in a wheelchair by the window. Chen Wei had once been imposing despite his modest height, with a straight back and penetrating gaze. Now he was gaunt, his skin yellowed, his once black hair completely white and thinning. But his eyes, those sharp, assessing eyes, were the same. Mr. Wilson, Chen Wei said, his voice weaker but still carrying the slight accent Mark remembered. You came. Mark approached and, after a moment's hesitation, extended his hand. Mr. Chen. The older man took his hand with surprising strength. Please, sit. We have much to discuss, and I have little time for pleasantries. Sophia hovered uncertainly. Father, would you like me to stay? Chen Wei shook his head. No, daughter. This conversation should be private. Mr. Wilson and I have old business between us. After Sophia left, closing the door behind her, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. Mark waited, letting the dying man gather his thoughts. I was wrong about you, Chen Wei finally said, the admission clearly difficult for him. I believed ambition was the measure of a man's worth. I wanted my daughter to have someone who would push her to greatness. Sophia achieved greatness on her own, Mark replied. She didn't need me or anyone else for that. Chen Wei nodded slowly. Yes. But at what cost? He gestured around the luxurious room. All this success, and she lives alone. Works 16 hours a day. Has no one to share her life with. Mark shifted uncomfortably. That was her choice. No, Chen Wei said firmly. It was my interference. I convinced her that love would hold her back. I made her believe she had to choose between success and happiness. The old man's eyes filled with tears. I was wrong, Mr. Wilson. So terribly wrong. For the next hour, Chen Wei spoke of regrets and missed opportunities. Of watching his daughter achieve everything he had ever wanted for her, only to realize she had sacrificed her chance at personal happiness in the process. He spoke of his wife, who had passed away 10 years earlier, never knowing the full extent of his manipulation. I cannot undo the past, Chen Wei concluded. But I can ask for your forgiveness before I leave this world. Mark sat in silence, processing everything he'd heard. The anger he'd expected to feel had never materialized. Instead, he felt a profound sadness for all the wasted years, all the paths not taken. I forgive you, Mr. Chen, he said finally. We all make mistakes trying to protect the people we love. Relief washed over the old man's face. Thank you. He reached for a small box on the table beside him. There is one more thing. A request, if you are willing. Inside the box was an old photograph, Mark and Sophia at their senior prom, young and radiant with possibility. My daughter never stopped loving you, Chen Wei said quietly. Even when she tried to convince herself otherwise. I ask only that you talk to her. Not for my sake, but for hers. And perhaps for yours as well. When Mark emerged from the sunroom, Sophia was waiting in the kitchen, pretending to work on her laptop but clearly too distracted to focus. How did it go? She asked, closing the computer. Better than I expected, Mark replied honestly. Your father is, not what I remembered. Sophia smiled sadly. Dying has a way of stripping away pretenses. Mark took a deep breath. He gave me this. He placed the prom photo on the counter between them. Sophia's fingers trembled slightly as she touched the edge of the photograph. I haven't seen this in years. He kept it all this time? Apparently so. Mark hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning in his mind. Why now, Sophia? After 20 years, why come looking for me? She met his gaze directly. Because I'm tired of living with regrets. Because my father's illness made me realize how fragile life is, how quickly it can slip away. She paused. And because I never stopped wondering what might have been. The admission hung between them, heavy with implication. I have a daughter, Mark reminded her gently. A life I've built. It's not perfect, but it's mine. I know, Sophia said. I'm not asking you to upend your life. I just... She struggled to find the words. I just wanted to see you again. To explain. To apologize. Mark studied her face, still beautiful, but now lined with the experiences of 2 decades. What happens now? Sophia shrugged, a surprisingly vulnerable gesture from someone so polished. That depends on you. On us. Maybe nothing. Maybe friendship. Maybe. She left the sentence unfinished. Maybe we start with coffee, Mark suggested. And see where it goes from there. The smile that bloomed on Sophia's face reminded him of the girl he'd once loved, bright and full of hope. I'd like that. Over the next few weeks, as Chen Wei's condition deteriorated, Mark found himself drawn back to the Chen household repeatedly. Sometimes he brought Emma, who, despite her initial skepticism, developed a surprising rapport with the dying man. Chen Wei seemed to delight in her sharp mind and forthright manner, often engaging her in debates about literature and philosophy that left Mark watching in amazement. "Your daughter is exceptional," Chen Wei told him during one visit. "You have raised her well." "She's her own person," Mark replied. "I just try not to get in her way too much." The old man chuckled, then winced in pain. When he recovered, he fixed Mark with an intense gaze. "And what of you and Sophia? Have you spoken of the future?" Mark shifted uncomfortably. "We're taking things slowly. Getting to know each other again." Chen Wei nodded. "Time is a luxury I no longer have, but you should use yours wisely." He reached for Mark's hand. "Promise me you will not waste this second chance." Before Mark could respond, Sophia entered with a tray of tea. The conversation shifted, but Chen Wei's words lingered in Mark's mind long after they left. Chen Wei passed away peacefully 3 weeks later, with Sophia holding his hand and Mark standing supportively nearby. The funeral was a small, dignified affair, attended primarily by business associates and a few old friends from the Chinese immigrant community. As they stood at the graveside, Sophia slipped her hand into Mark's. "Thank you," she whispered. "For giving him peace at the end." Mark squeezed her hand gently. "He gave me something too. Understanding. Closure." Later, at the reception in the Chen home, Emma pulled her father aside. "So what happens now?" she asked bluntly. "With you and Sophia?" Mark glanced across the room, where Sophia was thanking guests for coming. "I don't know, Em. We're still figuring that out." Emma rolled her eyes. "Dad, I'm not blind. I see how you look at each other." She hesitated, then added more softly, "Mom would want you to be happy, you know." Mark felt his throat tighten with emotion. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher," Emma replied with a small smile. Just don't mess it up this time, okay?" 6 months later, Mark stood in his apartment, surveying the half-packed boxes scattered around the living room. Emma burst through the front door, waving an envelope excitedly. It came. "My acceptance letter from Stanford," she exclaimed. "Full scholarship." Mark pulled her into a tight hug, pride and bittersweet emotion washing over him. "I never doubted it for a second. Your mom would be so proud." "Sophia helped a lot with my application essays," Emma admitted. "Do you think she'll be happy about Stanford, even though she's an MIT girl? Why don't you ask her yourself?" Mark suggested, nodding toward the door where Sophia had just appeared, carrying a box of her own. "Ask me what?" Sophia inquired, setting down her burden. "I got into Stanford. Full ride," Emma announced, bouncing on her toes. Sophia's face lit up. "That's wonderful. We'll have to celebrate tonight." She glanced at Mark. "Unless you two want to celebrate just as father and daughter?" The easy way Sophia offered them space, always careful not to overstep, was one of the many things Mark had come to love about her over these past months. "Don't be ridiculous," Emma said before Mark could respond. "You're family now. Or you will be, once Dad finally gets around to proposing." "Emma!" Mark exclaimed, his face flushing. Sophia laughed, the sound bright and unrestrained. "Your daughter lacks subtlety, but she makes a good point." Mark shook his head, smiling despite his embarrassment. "I was waiting for the right moment." "This seems like a pretty good moment to me," Emma suggested, backing toward her bedroom. "I'll just give you two some privacy." After she disappeared, Mark turned to Sophia with a rueful smile. "That wasn't exactly how I planned to do this." Sophia stepped closer, wrapping her arms around his waist. "We've wasted enough time on perfect plans, don't you think? 20 years is a long debt to repay." Mark touched her cheek gently. "Some debts are worth every penny of interest." As their lips met, Mark marveled at the strange, winding path that had brought them back to each other. A debt collected, a promise fulfilled, and a future neither of them could have imagined 20 years ago, unfolding before them one day at a time. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more emotional journeys that remind us it's never too late for second chances. Sometimes the debts we owe to our past are actually investments in our future. Share your thoughts in the comments below.